So to start with, thank you for inviting me into your home, into your beautiful home. And this room is one of complete peace. I feel very grounded and
Oh,
very,
thank you. It's my
very nice.
favourite
So,
space.
and
Mm,
thank you for kind of agreeing to do this kind of interview chat kind of
Pleasure.
thing. As you know, I've just started a YouTube channel that I'm trying to promote different areas of kind of helping people. So I've got a bit about recovery, a bit about travel, a bit about Buddhism, mindfulness.
Mm.
I interviewed our good friend Powden, the monk, the other day about his perspective on life and Buddhism and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Another friend, Andy, from the Buddhist group.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some other people coming up, especially with neurodiversity.
Mm.
So the reason I thought I would get your perspective and your take on the world, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
is not only you're a very dear, good friend of mine that I've known through the Buddhist group, but you also are neurodiverse yourself
Mm.
with autism.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And we've had a lot of chats,
Mm.
particularly when we've been on a retreat in Portugal on like the rooftop
Mm. Mm.
or on a Tuesday night at the Buddhist group, and we've had
Yes.
some really nice conversations that I feel could benefit others.
Okay.
So that's kind of what the channel's about. That's
Yeah.
kind of what my intention is for this conversation today.
Okay.
So if I was to ask you the question of who is Tash and what's she about, or something very simple, so like, how did you get into Buddhism, or just
Okay.
a generic introduction?
Yeah. Oh dear, that's quite a broad question, but I'll do my
Yeah.
best. Yeah. So currently, I'm a mother and a Buddhist,
Mm-hmm.
and I live with my partner and my two teenagers.
Yeah.
And I work, my career is around providing training to health and social care staff on autism and
Awesome.
learning disability.
Yeah.
So for myself, I would say I would have been described as a very sensitive child. People would have used words like highly sensitive, over emotional, highly strung, things like that. But having said that, I was fortunate enough through many stages of my life, right from childhood, to have made some really, really good friends. So I've always had kind of a bit of a support network, if you like, whereas a lot of autistic people tend to feel quite isolated because relationships can be a real struggle for us. All kinds of relationships, really. And at the time, particularly in my teens and my early 20s, maybe even into my 30s, what used to be seen as like a highly sensitive, emotional child became a very anxious adult, and I suffered quite a lot from anxiety, like to the point where it stopped me doing things and stuff, but it would very much fluctuate. So sometimes I'd be highly social and be doing lots of things, and then other days I'd just feel so anxious I couldn't go somewhere, or I'd need like days to spend days where I'd feel really quite down. And to cut a long story short, after that, after kind of seeing mental health services and having therapy and different things, another family member was diagnosed as autistic, and through that, going through that process with them, made me realise that probably applied to me too.
Right.
But it hadn't really been recognised at the time because people in the sort of 80s didn't really know a lot about autism in women, and it was always a lot of the studies and things and documentaries and stuff, they were always about men or boys. And then someone discovered later on that autism actually looks quite different in women. But there were a lot of things about that diagnosis that really rang true to me and really helped me get insight into myself, and realised a lot more, had a lot of realisation around what was causing me to become anxious and why I felt so overstimulated and why I was getting so burnt out all the time. And being able to identify those things then equipped me to start working on ways of managing that. And then I've gone on, the more I've learnt about that, the more I've done other things, both voluntary and paid work, and informally with friends, to help other people do the same thing for themselves.
That's so beautiful. And you do give a lot to people. Like you said, you volunteer, you help, like your work is around neurodiverse people. You speak to friends, you're supporting now that will go on to support other people. You said quite a lot there that I wanted to just kind of unpick a little bit. One of the things you said about is you was diagnosed quite later on. And it's different for women than it is for men. First question is, how did you feel when someone said you're autistic? Was it a case of giving you a label as such, or was it freeing, or was it, how was it for you in that respect?
For me, it was just a revelation. I was really happy to understand that, because the way that I saw it, I was already working in the field. I was working with autistic people with fairly profound learning disabilities as well. So they didn't present in the same way as me, but I did have some knowledge about autism, and I was in touch with some charities and other professionals already. So there were places for me personally where I could go to for more information and support. So I was fortunate in that sense. No, I didn't feel it was an unhelpful label. I just feel like it's another way to describe who I am. So it's like, so people say, oh, I don't like the label autism because I'm more than just my autism. But actually, for me, like autism is a core part of who I am. It's like, I'm a mother, I'm a woman, I'm autistic, I'm a Buddhist. It's just, yes, we all have multiple identities that kind of overlap and intertwine, but it's very much a strong part of me. And
I think that's really interesting as well. It reminded me, for me, I identify myself as an alcoholic. I identify myself as a Buddhist, etc. And when people often think about, in my case, alcoholism, it's like people might say, you know, you're someone who's off the street, or you know, it's because of the drinking or the amount you drunk and stuff. But it's not. It's a whole kind of different personality, like you were saying.
And it helps explain. For me, it kind of helps me explain I'm this kind of person. You know, I have extra sensitivities in some areas. I process things a bit differently. Like if you say something to me and it seems obvious to you and I'm not getting it, maybe it's because I'm thinking about it in a different way. And it just kind of helps me to sort of explain that. Although having said that, I don't always disclose to everyone that I'm autistic. I'm fortunate, like in my work, I can talk about it. Amongst my friends, I can talk about it. My family know. But people that I don't know so well, maybe people in other social groups, or you know, sometimes where I volunteer, or colleagues, maybe who I don't work with so often, or previous colleagues, or you know, I don't always disclose it because people, there's still a lot of stigma. It's also massively misunderstood, and sometimes saying I'm autistic to people that don't really understand autism isn't particularly helpful, because they'll already have a preconceived idea in their mind. Either they will see you as like, oh gosh, you know, like she's significantly disabled or disadvantaged, or they dismiss it like, oh, everyone's a little bit autistic, which isn't true.
Exactly.
So it just becomes unhelpful. What I do think is that there needs to be more education around autism, and then maybe people wouldn't see it as such a label, and it could just be something more helpful. I find it, I mean, I think you need to know in order to get the right kind of support, especially if you're in an educational or work setting. It can be really helpful.
Interesting. Thank you. And I've got two questions. So the first one was around people have a stigma, for example, which I agree they do. What would be your message to, what would you want from people, not necessarily to go out and, you know, research for the next year, make it their life, but How would you like to be approached by someone who might not necessarily know what autism is and or understand it? And my second question is, what what would be your message to people who say, well, everyone's a bit autistic? Because that does happen a lot. You do hear it a lot. So yeah, it would be interesting to get your take on it.
Yeah, okay. So autism, I can't remember the diagnostic criteria and the wording of that has changed a bit over the years. But essentially, it incorporates differences in sensory perception and also social communication and information processing. And then that can impact a person in a number of ways. But so in terms of stigma, I'd say the important thing is to remember that everybody is individual and no two autistic people are going to be the same. Some autistic people have exceptionally high IQs. Some autistic people have learning disabilities and other challenges. There's a lot of people that have very strong sound sensitivity that don't like loud sounds, but there are also autistic people that seek out loud sounds.
Okay.
So it's just about having a difference in perception. It's not like a greater sensitivity it's not always disabling. It's just different to whatever is considered the norm, which is a bit of an arbitrary concept anyway, really, in my opinion. But so I currently work with about 20 autistic people, 20 people, most of whom are autistic, and every single person's different. Yeah, but sometimes because of the way we communicate and see things in a certain way, we're sometimes seen as difficult, pedantic. You know, sometimes people say that we look for too much detail, pull things apart, ask too many questions, that kind of thing. But that's just like the brain processing things in different ways. For some people, and I've experienced this myself, and I think it's led to some of my mental health issues, because you see things differently and perceive the world differently. When you're in a relationship with someone, any kind of relationship, like families, romantic relationships, friendships, whatever, work relationships, like I've sometimes felt like, am I on another planet or something? Like, why is this person not getting this? Or why are they getting angry with me? Like, I'm just trying to discuss something. Why are they getting angry with me? And so that can really impact on people's ability to sustain positive relationships. People often get rejected. They feel isolated. Some people feel like, oh, I just can't be bothered with people anymore, because it always ends up in tears. There's always something that happens and it turns out that I'm in the wrong and I don't know what I've done. And then, so people isolate themselves. Or some people turn to, can't manage sensory overload and different things like that. So there can be a lot of substance misuse in the population and things, because people are just trying to manage the way they feel. So it can be tied up with lots of other kind of experiences as well, I guess. Does that answer your question?
I'm not sure. I think it does, yeah. I think what I've taken from that is everyone is an individual. And you shouldn't label what we, or what society understands as autism, but to take each person as a unique individual that they are.
Rather than... and you share information about yourself depending on how much you want to share at that time. But people share things about themselves as a means of getting to know each other, right? So somebody might say, I'm gay. They don't need to tell anyone that they're gay, but if you're getting to know someone, it's a piece of information about yourself. And I see like being autistic is the same kind of thing. Like I might say that. But everyone is different, 100%. And I would like to think that maybe at some point in the future, maybe we won't have to make such a big deal out of these terms, because actually people will be valued for who they are. But currently there is an expectation that if you are an adult, particularly if you're an educated adult, there's an expectation that you're going to be able to cope with certain things and be able to do certain things. get on with certain tasks, and things should be easy for you. And sometimes I can't. There's just basic things that like I really struggle with, and what that feels like. It's not just about. So this kind of links in a little bit to the everyone's a little bit autistic thing. It's not just about, oh, I like things organised in a certain way, or I don't like loud sounds, or I'm a little bit socially awkward. It's the combination of all those things and the extent to which it impacts you. So with autistic people, what we're trying to avoid, essentially, the crux of it is not to go into a state of complete overwhelm, or what people refer to as a meltdown state, which is like a highly emotional, out of control kind of state, or getting completely burnt out and shut down and not being able to communicate with people, and kind of, which feels like you can't even get a sentence together or find the words or something. So what happens is, if all these things are not managed, your sensory environment, the people that you're with, having some understanding and communication, it all piles up, and then ends up with the autistic person being in a highly distressed state. Now, so this idea of being a little bit autistic, so people think, oh, there's a spectrum and it's linear, right? And at this end, you're really, really autistic. And at this end, you're only a little bit autistic. And then people think, oh, a little bit autistic, that probably means that like they like their clothes folded in a certain way and they don't eat certain foods or something. But actually, it's not like that. The spectrum it describes a whole spectrum of traits and characteristics that could fall under the category of autism. You have a spectrum of traits. Now, my spectrum might look, or people refer to it as a profile sometimes, might look different to another autistic person's profile. And some of my traits might impact my daily life to a small extent, and some might impact me a lot. But depending on which environment I'm in and who I'm with, it might not always be noticeable. And actually for me, because I've had a lot of insight and I've had a lot of I've been sort of supported by a community, I suppose, and had that education, my environment and who I socialise and where I go and how much is set up quite well for me. So it's quite unusual for me to get in that really distressed state. It still happens sometimes because you can't control everything.
Of course.
But if people find themselves in the wrong jobs, in the wrong environment, they're pushing themselves too far, they're doing too much, it's all too much for them, then that can make a person really, really unwell. And it varies. So somebody like myself, I'm not a little bit autistic. I'm just managing everything all the time, quite a lot. People would say high maintenance, right? It's like every little thing has to be managed. And often people think, oh, people who are very autistic are people that can't communicate at all, you know, that have like unusual behaviours or make unusual sounds, or need quite a lot of support and things like that. Often where that's the case, it is either because the autistic person has something else going on as well, like a learning disability or another more profound communication difference or something, or it might be just that they've got a particular trait that is a mismatch in a lot of environments. So maybe they've got a particular style of communicating, which is very different to the rest of the population in terms of their facial expression or the way they talk, which means they find it difficult to fit in, and people perceive them as looking different, sounding different. So people think, oh, that person's really very autistic, but it's not. No. It's just how it shows up in different people. In different ways. Am I explaining that well enough? No,
that is really good. Thank you. And you spoke about like burnout and managing certain situations, emotions, etc. How do you manage to kind of prevent yourself, if you like, getting to burnout, or how do you manage day-to-day life?
Yeah, so some of it is about like trying to organise myself in a certain way. So how I feel is, so my experience is that I feel like there's a lot of information coming in all the time, like whether it's like the feel of the clothes on my skin, or thinking about what I have to do today, or the jobs that need to be done, my actual environment and what that looks like. But everything, it's like everything all at once kind of thing. So I have to put some structure on that to make it manageable. Otherwise, I feel like the world's just spinning around me and I can't. And then I get to a point where I'm just like, I can't take it anymore. So an example is like I'm planning for a trip. Now it's quite hard to do something like that when there's so much else going on in the rest of your life. So I find that kind of task takes me quite a long time, longer than your average person. So I have to approach that in a really structured way. I like set a day when I'm going to do my shopping for that trip. Then I set a day when I'm going to make sure that I've done all the laundry and prepared everything I need ready to pack. And then I'll go through, you know, and then I'll systematically go through what do I need, and it takes me quite a long time. If I don't do that, it's like, it's really difficult to explain. I just can't manage it. I'll come to the day before my trip and I just feel like crying. I feel like I've got nothing organised. I'm going to forget something really important, and I just feel and actually that whole trip that's supposed to be enjoyable can suddenly feel like quite a stressful event. And I do know autistic people that don't go on holidays because they find it too stressful. But I find that it's more about finding a strategy for yourself that enables you to manage that.
That's really good. And like, so you're speaking about kind of before the trip happens, right?
And
that's the very physical things. I've got a couple of questions. So one is around, how do you manage in your mind, for example? So for me, I do a lot of meditation. I try and exercise to kind of manage my, I don't know, alcoholism or whatever traits I have. And then the other question is, what about, so that's before, what about during? So if you're going away on, you know, flying, airports can be quite, for me, I'm not autistic, but I find them overstimulating and stuff. So what would be your advice to manage?
Okay, so that's a couple of different things.
Sorry.
So there's a couple more. I'll do the practical things first. So on the practical side, there are things that I do. So certainly in an airport, I have earphones playing music because it's that, like, there's a lot going on. I need to try and focus on where I need to be. And music I find really helpful in calming me down, so I often do that. I often carry aromatherapy oils with me because I'm very sensitive to smell. So actually having some nice or some calming aromatherapy oils, I just rub them on my hands, and that helps me. And I always have things with, there's always certain things I take with me, like I cannot stand the feeling of having dry skin, so I always have some kind of moisturizer. I always have some kind of soft jumper. It's like if like my temperature's wrong, if I'm too cold or too hot, that starts to really distract me, and I can end up getting quite irritated. So I always make sure I have the right clothing, things like that, comfortable, and food as well. Always make sure that I have some kind of snack and some kind of drink in my bag all the time. Because where you're managing all these kinds of things all the time, if anything sets you off balance, if you're too tired, too hungry, or something like that, that makes that management all the more challenging. In terms of like mentally or emotionally, mindfulness is one of the biggest things that's ever helped me. I've had CBT and counselling and therapies, and I've talked to other autistic people, and all of those things have been helpful to some extent. But the thing about it is, when I talk about this experience of anxiety and distress, that's the main thing that you're trying to reduce, right? So mindfulness can be used to manage anxiety if you are able to notice how you're feeling, how that, and when I say how you're feeling, it's how that is manifesting in the body. So are you tight in your chest? Are you starting to feel shaky? Things like that. Are you struggling to think of what to say, or are your thoughts moving really fast? And to be mindful and actually be able to notice, like, oh, I'm really tense in my body, then you can do something about it. So you can breathe into it and help yourself relax a bit more. You can practice meditation by noticing your thoughts without getting too attached to them, and don't go, because then you can go into a spiral of anxiety. Whereas actually, if you just experience anxiety as a sensation, it's a lot less to manage than the anxiety plus a load of thoughts, plus everything you might say and do as a result of those thoughts that might then have negative consequences as well, and things. Yeah, so I definitely say mindfulness is key.
And I think that's key to a lot of like my experiences as well. So there's something that someone said before. It's like instead of identifying with, and this comes into mindfulness, instead of identifying and saying I am anxiety or I am anger or I am, it's more anxiety is here or anger is here.
Yeah.
You know, not making yourself that.
Or anxiety is coming up for me, or something like that.
And just
or
let it pass.
I'm starting to feel some anxiety,
exactly,
something like that. Yeah. So, and anybody who struggles with anxiety can manage that. The thing about being autistic is that there's so many more things that can make you feel anxious, because what it's all about, it's about being in a state of arousal. It's a fight or flight thing. Yeah. So your fight or flight is triggered, but that might be, for someone else, it might be because they're running late for an appointment. But for an autistic person, it might be that they're running late for an appointment and it's really loud and, something's really uncomfortable and they're very aware of the sensation of being hungry, and it all piles on. So it takes a lot more dedication and practice, I think, to manage your anxiety through mindfulness as an autistic person. But I know it's possible because I can do it. But I don't get it right in every, I'm not a fully practiced master or anything, so I don't get it right in every situation, but it definitely helps. There's made a big difference in my life.
Obviously, you are human and these things, but what I've seen and how you've come from when I first met you to where you are now is like you can really see the difference in calmness, and you present a really nice, beautiful message to the world. So I think you really have come a long way. A couple more questions, and then I guess we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit, maybe.
Okay.
What would be your message to anyone who either is autistic or thinks they may be autistic? Firstly, around managing autism, and the other thing is, what help is out there for people who may or may not be autistic?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of people at the moment that I say that people are not educated. There's definitely a lot of work to be done on that, but awareness is increasing. And a lot of people that have had struggles with their mental health have come across things either on social media or through talking to friends, and they've received information and they've started to identify that actually they might be autistic. And for some people, just knowing that helps them, and they don't bother going to get a diagnosis. And then they start reading and they're learning and getting support from just those of their community around them. And I've known people do that. The other thing to consider is actually getting a diagnosis. Unless you go privately, there can be a long waiting time for that, from submitting your request to actually being assessed and getting the diagnosis. It's often sort of 2 to 3 years, depending on which part of the country you live in. But if you are having significant challenges at work, in your relationships or in education, I'd say it's definitely worth doing, because then it gives you something. Because where there's this expectation of you should be able to do this within this amount of time, once you have the diagnosis, you have like this professional ground on which to say, actually, I can't do it, and I'm not making it up.
Exactly.
So that's I think the main reason why diagnosis is helpful. And also I've spoken to some people where sort of family members haven't believed it or something, because they've just understood autism in a very stereotypical way, and they've sort of dismissed it, which people find invalidating and unhelpful. You can't be autistic. So people go and get a diagnosis just to kind of prove it and satisfy themselves. So that can be helpful. What was your other question?
What help is out there?
What help is out there? Yeah. Again, it varies in different parts of the country. So, currently, can I name specific charities and things? I presume I can. So, 2 charities that I'm aware of and kind of have been working with quite recently. There's an organisation called Academy, and they do lots of YouTube videos and things by autistic people on all
Awesome.
kinds of different subjects,
so cool.
talking about their experiences, like many things.
Yeah.
And I really recommend them for their resources and information.
Mm-hmm.
And locally we have Kent Autistic Trust, which support people with all different kinds of needs. So they run some peer support groups online, but they also support people that have quite high support needs as well, like in homes and things like, and schools and things like that. So they're quite good. But I would recommend kind of going online and Googling what's available in your local area, and also reading. Actually, if you look in the library, bookshops, on websites, whatever, there's loads and loads of lots of autistic adults now are starting to speak out and write about their own experiences and things, and what's helped them and what hasn't been helpful. There's actually a whole community, autistic community out there, where people share ideas and read books and things. So I definitely recommend looking that up. Obviously, mindfulness I'd recommend trying if you're able to access a mindfulness coach or a group or something like that. I'd recommend that.
And I think what you're saying is basically people aren't on their own. You know, there's so many different things that can help people. Just try and
because a lot of people do feel like, oh, I've got my diagnosis and then that's it. There's no more help for me. And unfortunately, government funding, things like that, means that there are very few services in some areas that people can just drop into and access. Whereas you'll go to other areas and where autistic people have taken it upon themselves, and they've got social groups going on, and they do little autistic pride festivals and all different things. But it really depends on where you live. But the internet's a wonderful resource, so get out there and find people is what I would say. And also particularly if you're someone that struggles with making friends, things like that, there are a lot of online autistic communities that you can interact with. Some autistic people find it struggle to communicate through speaking, even though they have good use of language and are very knowledgeable, have a large lexicon. Maybe they still don't use words, and they find it much easier to type rather than trying to speak to people. So people can make friends that way now.
Thank you. And then, sorry, 2 questions to end on. One is, what could I do for people who have autism in terms of, you know, what would you want people to say or do or things like that? And lastly, what's your message, whether it's about the world, life, autism, you know, what is it that you think, oh, I wish everyone knew this one thing?
I think they're probably both rolled into one.
Lovely.
Actually, I'll probably answer them all both in one. And my message really is just be kind. If you're just kind and understanding and don't set expectations of people, and if you're in a conversation with someone and suddenly they start, it seems like they're losing it and they're screaming and crying and shouting or something, try and think, what is going on for this person here, and don't think, oh my god, they're really weird, and like, I don't think I want to be friends with them anymore or whatever. Just try and understand, because that person, there's probably a reason behind that person's distress. Or if you've got a friend that, like, you know, is normally in really good contact or something, but suddenly they're not responding to your texts or things, or maybe you feel let down, because often with autistic people they agree to social occasions, but sometimes on the day we might feel too overwhelmed, we might cancel it, and just because it's just too much that day. So again, just be kind, understanding, try not to feel like it's personal, like they're letting me down again, they're so unreliable, they never turn up, oh yeah, they always say they're going to do that thing, but I bet they don't come, like, because that person is probably struggling and just needs you to be kind and understanding. I think acceptance is big, like just feeling like you're accepted by your community, I think can have profound positive effects on anyone's mental health. Being isolated is not good for us.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for supporting not just the channel, but like the whole world, because people will see it and they will take something from it. And thank you not just from what we're doing now, but what you do in life in general, like your kindness, like giving me this just before we travel and coming to parties and sharing your experience and the deep chats we've had and supporting me and allowing me to feel accepted in a world when sometimes I felt I was very much alone. So you're very much loved. I love you. I'm going to
I
miss
love
you when
you
we
too.
go. And
Yeah,
we'll
well,
leave
we
it
can
there.
carry on chats because
Yeah.
you can, you know,
It'll be
and there
like,
is technology.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Cheers. Oh.